Save the Semantics, episode 370. It is April 16th, 2026. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Thursday evening. It has gotten ridiculously hot. Not ridiculously hot. This is probably nothing. This is just like the precursor to the summer, but very humid. Something that myself coming from, California weather is not necessarily accustomed to, but I'll get it. I'll adjust over time. But yeah, it's been, I'm finally kind of at the tail end of sort of my busy kind of period, and I'm in the process of moving. I haven't, I still need to move, which happens at the end of this month, which I am excited for. It's going to be a bit of a venture to have to move my things again. Luckily, I didn't. I've kept most of my things fairly compact. I really haven't. I haven't had to I haven't bought anything new really outside of a few things, but most of my things are going to be in suitcases, so I'm not overly concerned about that move entirely. It's not, I feel like it's going to be pretty good for the most part. But yeah, it's another sort of transition, a smaller one, obviously, in comparison to just the initial move of moving across the country, but still going to be another move to sort of getting used to a new space, getting used to kind of living in a new area. There's going to be sort of that initial adjustment, but that's going to be sort of my more permanent residence over the course of the next year or so. So I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm excited to kind of have this new space. I'm excited to kind of build it out into something that I can kind of care for this next period of my life. And it's very, very exciting. So that's kind of where that's sort of what I'm setting my sights on in the very near future. I have been wanting to talk some basketball for a long time, but I just haven't had the chance. I've been busy. I just couldn't make the time. I think I will, once I get my new place, something that I have been considering is maybe making a bit of a space for me to record. We'll see how that goes. That's a bit more, maybe later down the line, more of a secondary thing. But I've been wanting to talk about the playoffs, which are rapidly coming up. The play-in has started. The first play-in games have been yesterday and the day before, which have been some excellent games. I'll touch upon those a little bit. But the playoff matchups that are already set in stone also are pretty intriguing to me. I don't know if I'll do a full breakdown, but I do want to get into what I am most interested in seeing in each of these series. Maybe some of the series I'll have less to say on because I'm just not going to be as invested. I most likely because I don't think that they're going to be the most competitive, but it's outside of the beginning of the regular season, this is the most exciting time to be a NBA fan. The beginning of the playoffs, round one, you get some incredible matchups. I mean, the play-ins have already just given us just an awesome appetizer to what's about to come. And these single elimination games, just the amount of pressure that is put on each of the teams, especially those that are in the 9-10 positions, have been great. Teams that are on the brink of their season ending. It's really just it's been awesome, and I think it's It's a great way to kind of start off the postseason without getting into any of the actual series yet. So let me touch upon the play-ins first a little bit before I get into the proper playoffs. The Heat Hornets game was incredible. I mean, that was just such a that was such a fun start to this, to this playoff run, or to this kind of postseason stretch. Like, I I've talked about the Heat and just my general kind of just apathy for the Heat. I've gotten tired of them over the last few years, just constantly being in the playoffs. Outside of that incredible run in 2023, they have just been in the mud for these last few years, just, in kind of the same manner as the Hawks and the Bulls. But both of those teams are franchises are going in different trajectories at this point, while the Heat continue to kind of stay in this middling area. And I was just so tired of seeing the same iteration over and over again. I get it with some little tweaks here and there. Khalil Ware's sort of I don't know if I would call it ascendance, but his emergence as a potential partner alongside Bam Adebayo, and then slotting in like Wiggins and Norman Powell. Like, these are some interesting tweaks here and there, but the identity, the core center of that team remains the same. It's just the fact that they all kind of play under this umbrella of Spoelstra basketball, right? The buy-in of whatever the culture, whatever you want to call it, Heat culture, all that kind of stuff. And 23 was an incredible example of what they were able to achieve or overachieve with not a whole lot of star player outside of Jimmy Butler, but that has long since faded. They do not have the same prestige, the same level of talent, high-end talent as they did with Butler. Like, that has since gone to the wayside. And I think the fact that they have not moved past that and they continue to kind of cling on to this was incredibly frustrating, because I wanted to see some new blood. I was sick of seeing this same Heat team over and over again doing what felt like the same exact thing. I know schematically, there's a lot of better analysts out there that can provide more insight as to what exactly that they've done differently year to year. But in terms of their identity, in terms of what they represent, they've been the same team. It feels right. And so going into this play-in game, I just was so, I was just like, okay, let's just have Charlotte, kind of take this one, and then allow them to kind of be this young upcoming team, allow them to kind of take their step into the postseason. And what ended up happening was one of the best games of the season. You had just these incredible shot makes by players like Kobe White, Tyler Hero, just this back and forth. Adebayo's injury was, not great, obviously, with LaMelo Ball grabbing at his ankle and causing him to fall. That was clearly flagrant. I don't understand why they didn't look back at that. But, putting that aside, just the shot making from both of these teams, from their best players, just the going into the overtime, the flipping back and forth between who was going to win the game. Like, it was just really just great basketball overall, and I was so happy to witness that, to be able to witness that, because I didn't really have the highest of hopes going into this play-in game, because again, maybe I underestimated Miami's resilience or whatever, but Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Khalil Ware, like those kind of three players really contributed to almost winning the game. Just kind of falling short with the ball game winner, but I'm happy that they gave us that before what might be a significant change to their roster going into next season. And I'm glad that they gave us this game, because it was really fun, and it was just such a great start to the postseason. The second game on Tuesday night was the Blazers and the Suns, which also ended up being an awesome game. Maybe not to the same caliber as the first one because of just the drama was not at the same degree, but you had the Blazers down double digits in the first, in the fourth quarter, and I was kind of anticipating that, okay, this is sort of where the Suns, with a little bit of their experience from Booker and Brooks, that was going to allow them to kind of push them to the win, but they couldn't buy a bucket. I think Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks kind of took some ill-advised shots at towards the end of the game, and that allowed the Blazers to come back. Jeremy Grant had some awesome moments, and then Avdia kind of took it over for the rest of the game and really just sort of, kind of put the dagger. But that was also just a really fun game. I think just opening night for this kind of play-in tournament was really fun. And I'll talk about the matchup with them, the Blazers and the Spurs, maybe in a little bit, because it might be a bit of an interesting matchup. I don't know if the Blazers really stand too much of a chance, but they might give the Spurs like a little bit of, just like a little bit of a challenge, like not too much. But I'll talk about that a little bit more. Yesterday we had the Sixers, the Magic, another Florida team that I just am so sick of seeing. I think their fans are also sick of seeing them as well. Like, they seem to be just completely out of it. I think they want the season to end just as much as everybody else. Just an absolutely miserable watch for the remainder, kind of this last half of the season. They lost by 52 points against the Raptors. They lost by 30 against the Hawks, and then they blew that last game of the season against the Celtics in an embarrassing fashion. Like, they have just been the most embarrassing team this season. Like, there's not even really a comparison. Like, the most disappointing season, considering their acquisition of Desmond Bane, and what that could have potentially resulted in, and it just has not come to fruition. And it just feels like everything is kind of falling apart for them. Their future is in jeopardy with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner. Obviously, Jamal Mosley as their head coach is likely going to be out by the end of this. So it's been a miserable watch. They did put up a bit of a fight against the Sixers yesterday, and made out to be like a decent, kind of a decent watch. Honestly, both teams weren't really playing that well. Really, Maxey, Tyrese Maxey kind of took over at the end of the game, but he really was not having a good game in this game. Like, he had like a lot of shot attempts earlier on that weren't going in. I think it just felt like he was kind of forcing up some shots, but eventually, kind of he was able to kind of find his rhythm, and then, he sort of helped guide the Sixers to victory. VJ Edgecombe had a very impressive performance as a rookie. Andre Drummond hitting threes, which I was not anticipating. The shot looks like decent too for him. It's just like a interesting kind of wrinkle in there on that roster, and sort of schematically. The Embiid thing sucks. Like, it's so unfortunate that he just continues to have the worst luck in terms of his injuries and just untimely moments. Like, it just feels that his entire career is predicated on just the fact that of his unavailability, and it's really unfortunate. I think a lot of people have put him down as this player who doesn't, show up for the playoffs. And maybe you can point that to a few series here and there, whether it's against the Hawks, in the Trae Young, Ben Simmons series, or the Celtics when Harden was playing. But you could chalk that up to a lot of things of his supporting cast, including James Harden, not not really doing much to alleviate, just sort of the burden that Embiid has had to face. Like, I do think that Embiid has gotten just really the short end of the stick in a lot of instances. He's not my favorite player. He has had some questionable and even some dirty moments in some games in the past, which I think is absolutely fair to call out. But I do think he's an incredible talent. He was, his MVP pick was, contentious. I get that because of Jokic and everything. But he was incredible that season, and I do think he was a deserving candidate. It just was hard. I think there was a little bit of that voter fatigue of all that because both Giannis and Jokic were kind of in the mix, and it is what it is. But I think that he's still an incredible player. It's just that his limitations are his body and just all of these things that have happened to him, and it really sucks because I think there are comments about, oh, he's just not playing hard enough and all that. I just think that his body has just not functioned well. Like, that just might be the case, and I think that it just, in the world of sports and everything, I understand the contract and all of that, but it's just, I think that there's almost no grace given to athletes in this type of position. Again, some of it is warranted. I understand there's a lot of frustration with his play style, and he is also kind of a bit of a he can be a bit of this, I don't want to say controversial figure off the court, but he is contentious off the court as well with some of his comments. So all that kind of wrapped up makes it a bit of a tricky situation with the Sixers and everything, but it's really unfortunate that he just has had the worst luck when it comes to just timing of when it comes to the playoffs and just overall his career. So anyways, moving on. Warriors Clippers, just an incredible performance by Steph and Draymond. Going into this game and honestly watching like the first quarter, I was of the mind, which I'm sure I was not alone. I know I wasn't alone. I know like some of my friends also echoed this, but I was considering like, I think it might actually just be better to lose and get a pick in this matchup, in this loaded draft. Maybe just give them a run for our money. Curry is going to play limited minutes. Porzingis is going to play limited minutes. Like, what is even the point of this? Like, this is just kind of, this is just window dressing. Like, what exactly are we looking at here? And at the end of the day, you want your team to win. Like, that's just what it is. Like, once they started to get close, when Guy Santos was kind of being that energy bunny for, Energizer bunny for like that first half, he was solid throughout the game, but I definitely noticed his presence more in the first half. Like, I think he was the one that kind of held that team around like a 10-point, deficit against the Clippers in that first half. And then you had that kind of wave, the uncle wave, the old man wave of Steph, Al Horford, and then Draymond on the defensive end, and that closed out the game. It was just, you just cannot beat what happens with this championship core and championship experience, throwing Horford and Porzingis kind of in there, all injury history and all that kind of stuff aside, and their age, obviously. This is what it comes out to, in a win or lose, or win or go home game. I think that this type of style can, kind of favor these types of, players that have kind of been there before. You could argue that the Warriors have kind of struggled to, get out of the play-in at some times, but when things click, it's some of the best basketball. it is. Like, there's no better show than Steph going off, and his emotion that he just, that he showed at the end of this game was just kind of, it was a reflection of the season. It was a reflection of him as a player, kind of going into the end of this era. We know the end is near. We know we know that the likely scenario of this is that there's going to just be, it's not, they're going to go into rebuild mode in the next few years, and it's all a matter of trying to preserve what is still here and what still is possible with Steph on the floor. And these are the moments that, we want. These are the moments that we continue to appreciate despite them, waning in frequency. I think that there is just this incredible amount of, I think the fact that there really wasn't a whole lot of pressure in this game, I think provided some levity for this team and allowed them to overcome whatever circumstances that they had, especially in this one game sample. Like, they just were able to take advantage of it. They were able to, put all of their prowess into this one performance, and it showed, and it resulted in, for the Warriors, one of the better wins of the season, right? When they were performing incredibly well at the beginning of the regular season, I was very happy to kind of see them get to this position, and I was like, this is a continuation of the kind of, Butler's injection into the into this team, and some of the energy that they carried from their playoff run. And obviously that kind of faltered, and everything went to the wayside, and all the injuries with Jimmy and Moses Moody and everything like that, the Kuminga situation, like it just was a pretty messy season overall. And this just felt like this, this release, this kind of a little bit of just a little twinkle at the end of the tunnel. And I think this was probably, all of the things that happened. Like, I just think, I don't want to say it's a wash, because it's not. Like, we're still at this position. I don't know what the next year for this team is going to be. Butler's going to be still out for who knows how long, at least for more than half of next year's regular season. But you just can't count this team out, and you got to appreciate what's given to you. And this game in particular was one of the best wins. It was the best win of the season. It's the one I'm going to remember. Like, from everything that happened, I just don't think you're really going to remember much of, like, the middle, where they were just completely getting, when they just absolutely fell apart in the standings. Like, this is the one that we were all waiting for, and it's just all about appreciating it in the moment. And I don't know what's going to happen, the game against Phoenix. Like, Porzingis apparently twisted his ankle, and Draymond had something going on with his knee at the end of that game. So I don't know how much stock I want to put into this next game against Phoenix, but it's whatever, man. It's we're riding on some type of hope, and if there is anything, I will never count this team out, even if, like, there's just nothing even remotely plausible to grasp at. Like, there's just something that can happen with this team with Steph Curry still on it. I'm going to do some quick previews of the playoffs. There's been a lot of just, like, conversations going on, of course, because what else are you going to talk about? Like, it's again, the most exciting time of the year. But I just wanted to kind of, give a little bit in terms of what I am looking for in each of the series that are already set up. Out of all of the series, the one that intrigues me the most, and listen, it's maybe a little bit has to do with the fact that I'm here right now, but it's the Knicks and the Hawks. I would say out of all of the series, this one intrigues me the most, because there just feels like there is just so much variability, especially with like the Hawks players, right? And some of the some of the questions that continue to plague the Knicks. I think the Knicks will perform up to their level as they did last year. Some people are saying this might be a repeat of last year's series against the Pistons. I just think the Hawks are a very different team. The Hawks have shooters. They have, their style of offense is very not heliocentric. It's very, sort of, fairly spread out with, Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Dyson Daniels isn't as much on the offensive end, but he can get, into the mix. CJ McCollum, like they have just this sort of group of players that are willing to share the ball. It's very different stylistically from, the Trae Young ball that most people associated this Hawks team with over the last 4 years. I think that it's so funny because the Hawks, they were one of my most intriguing teams going into this season. And then of course the injuries with Trae Young, Porzingis, that just completely hampered them. The Trae Young extension contract was looming kind of in the background, and they decided to pull the plug and trade Trae Young. And I think there was no real expectation for them going into the rest of the season afterwards. I think a lot of people, including myself, considering that they have the pick, they have this was a pick swap with the Pelicans, felt that they were already in a good position regarding their future. They have a young core with Johnson, Dyson Daniels, whatever. And it was just okay, let's just see what they can do. If they miss the playoffs, it's not that big of a deal because they have, a top pick coming in lieu of the Pelicans. But instead, or I guess along with that, they decided to go on this crazy run where they were 23-2 or something. I don't know I don't remember the exact numbers, but they went on this run. I know a lot of people were pointing out it's weak, just opponent strength. I don't care. They still won all of these games, right? And they put themselves very clearly in this Eastern Conference bracket, and I really have enjoyed watching what they've done. The game earlier where they played against the Knicks, which felt like a bit of a preview of the potential playoffs, probably not exactly what it's going to look like, but some things you might be able to pick up on, which was an incredible game. Hawks fell short just with a CJ McCollum banked in three, which was just on his fingertips. But I feel like they're just such a weird team. They're so funky, but in a good way. And I do think the Knicks overall just talent is going to be a bit overwhelming for them, especially with Brunson at the helm. I do think that when things slow down, Brunson especially will be the one that will set the tone, all that kind of stuff, right? From the perspective of the Hawks, though, they do have some of the best perimeter defenders in Alexander Walker and Dyson Daniels. So if either of them are able to create some havoc, maybe, detract Brunson from getting the ball, which I get is incredibly difficult. But if they're able to do any of that, I feel like this could be a fun series. I think this I mean, this is my most intriguing series. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to go 6. I think I picked the Knicks in 6 on this, but I think it's going to be a very competitive series just because I feel like the Hawks can throw a lot of wrenches. They have almost a 5 out lineup outside of Dyson Daniels, which is funny. But they just have just a lot of these, like, kind of sort of rangy, wing players, and it just feels like it could be a really fun matchup. And I'm also, listen, a little bit of a slant, not slant, but a little bit of an influence is just, I'm excited to kind of be in this energy, be in this city. I'm gonna try to watch one of the games at a sports bar. Maybe this. I think I'm gonna see if I can do that this Saturday. I think that's gonna be a really fun time to be amongst that, even despite not being like an actual fan of either team. Well, I think I have a bit of a, rooting interest for the Hawks because I've just always have been kind of interested in them. I've liked Trae Young. I'm maybe one of the rare Trae Young fans, but I've liked the Hawks team. Like, they have, I don't know, it has never really worked out all the way through for them, but they've always had some fun things going on. And I like this team. I really like Jalen Johnson. Also, he was an absolute stud for my fantasy team, so I also have a bit of a slant there maybe. So it'll be exciting to see kind of, fans getting both excited and upset over the results and frustrations of the Knicks. So I think that's going to be fun to be a part of in person. So that's something that's kind of caught my attention. I guess I won't go through every series just because I'll say quickly about some of these series that I'm not super intrigued by. Sixers, Celtics, unfortunately, as I talked about with the Embiid injury, I just think that hampers the Sixers so much. I just don't know how much of a chance they have. It's just like, I think Maxey can maybe steal one game, and that's probably it. The Thunder versus whoever comes out of the Phoenix Warriors game. Listen, as much credence I want to give the Warriors, I just don't know. I just don't really have. It's going to be a tough one. It's like, could the championship pedigree of this core combined somehow win some games? Maybe one or two, but I really just wouldn't put too much on that. Again, I'll still be invested, of course, if the Warriors make it. Like, I'll still be invested, of course, because, it's my team, but I just don't have a lot of hope riding into it. And what else? What other team? What other matchup am I not super interested in? I guess the Lakers-Rockets is just the unfortunate fact of Luka and Austin Reeves being out, because I think that could have been a fun series. But yeah, just the Lakers are just decimated by not having two of their best players. And that just kind of sucks, right? It kind of feels similar almost to when Steph went out against the Wolves. Like, that just completely changed that series, right? When the Warriors stole, when the Warriors kind of stole game one, but it just didn't, outside of that, like, you kind of saw the result of that afterwards, and I feel you could kind of make the same case for this Lakers team against the Rockets. Although I know there are a lot of question marks, a lot of people do not like this Rockets team. I get it. It's I understand. There's a lot of frustration, bad vibes for a good team too is so weird, especially with like the KD burner phone stuff and all that nonsense. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, stylistically, the Rockets are also just not a fun team to watch, so I would probably put that as like another, not a series I'm not super interested in. Raptors, Cavs, weird series. It would be easy to kind of pencil in the Cavs, and I agree. Like, I think it's easy to just sort of put them as the team that's going to advance in this round because of just their overall star talent. I don't know who's going to guard Brunson, or excuse me, I don't know who's going to guard Harden and Mitchell on that Raptors team. I just don't know if they have the caliber of player for that. And a big issue for them, for the Raptors, is that they might also be missing Emmanuel Quickly for the first, whoever knows how long, but he's been out. There's some issue. There's been some issues about a hamstring, and also plantar fasciitis on his foot, which he has been dealing with. Like, not great, right? I think they need guard play. They really don't have a ton of reliable guards outside of like Barrett, who functions honestly more as a small forward, kind of small forward shooting guard position. But outside of that, Jacoby Walter, I do like he's like a good 3-and-D player, but I just don't know how much he can really do to contain the likes of a Harden and a Mitchell. I just don't, that's really kind of the main thing. And then also it's just overall it's just a huge talent deficit between the Raptors and the Cavs. I think the hope for the Raptors is that their play style is contingent on them, on their sort of defensive pressure that they apply, and their kind of play style. So if that causes any, flurry or I guess any, causes the Cavs to hesitate or to maybe falter in some instances, that is like one area where the Raptors can potentially take advantage, going transition and all that kind of stuff. But when the game slows down, Raptors offense is not good. Cavs offense, they have multiple options to go to with Harden, Mitchell. They could do some type of pick and roll action with either of their bigs and Allen and Mobley. They have shooters too. They have Strus, Sam Merrill. Keon Ellis isn't known as a shooter, but he's pretty good at that as well. Like they have Dennis Schroeder is coming out. Like they have, like, just look at the amount of guards that they have in comparison with like the Raptors. Like that alone, I feel is like almost is kind of a underrated piece of it as well, right? Outside of their the bigger players. I feel I think the Raptors can make it a bit more of like a, they can kind of push it. I think just with their will alone, I think they could take maybe one or two. I'm leaning one. Unfortunately, I do hope this gets to Game 6. The Cavs have had some struggles against lesser opponents in the past, like the Magic 2 years ago. The Pacers series was, I understand the injuries to Garland and Mobley, but, they were, the Cavs were a 60-win team, right? Like they should have still been the better team, or, they still should have had a bit more of a fighting chance as opposed to losing in 5. So just based on some of those accolades or lack of accolades, I'm going to say I was thinking 6, but there's just not, the Cavs are good, but just all of the things put together, I feel like they're gonna make it honestly worse for themselves. I do think the pressure from the Raptors defense will kind of be sort of, one of the factors in allowing them to win some games. But so I'll say the Cavs in 6. I think it'll be a longer series than it should be. There's going to be some games where like the Cavs just completely fall apart and can't make shots. And then I think that's going to be where some of the wins come from for the Raptors. So I'd say Cavs in 6. Let's talk about one more series. The Timberwolves and the Nuggets. I think a lot people, I keep saying people, but history has been sort of this indication that this is a great matchup, and it has been. That 7-game series where the Wolves shocked the Game 7 in 2024, still probably one of the best games that I've seen in the last few years, outside of every Pacers game from last season, right? But outside of that, I would say that just the fact that they shocked this this championship team in the Nuggets, and essentially kind of took away their chances of repeating, was very impressive, and one of the most exciting comebacks, down 20 in the fourth and then coming back to win it. Rudy Gobert fadeaway shot against Jokic, like that always just like is like in my mind. And then like Naz Reid going crazy, like those things just kind of stick with me. But I just don't think this is the same caliber Timberwolves team, even with last year. There's a lot of question marks with Ant's injury. Jaden McDaniels was kind of banged up. I think this is one of those another cases, like an underrated case, where I think some of those injuries, those lingering injuries, are going to have an effect on this Wolves team and their ability to perform and to play up against this Denver team. Denver really started to click towards the end of the regular season. They looked awesome. Cam Johnson kind of picked it up after his really slow start to the regular season. I just feel like things are clicking. Listen, I'll repeat this from what I said a little while back, but I do think that this Nuggets team, if healthy and if everything kind of works out, have one of the best rosters in the league. And I predicted that they're gonna win the championship this year. Not everything has kind of worked out in their favor because of a lot of those injuries that have happened earlier on for them. But I just think a fully healthy Nuggets squad is just, they're just too good. This is the most, like, this team has the most depth that any Jokic team has had outside of that 23 championship team. Honestly, I feel like they might even be better than that team. And the Wolves, there's just a lot of there's just too many question marks, especially with along with Ant and Jaden McDaniels' injury. You also have Randall, who is some of his kind of negative maybe energy, whatever you want to call it, has kind of come back since there's been a little bit of adversity for that team. I do really like Ayo Dosumu's insertion into this team. I've really liked him on the Bulls. He was definitely one of the better Bulls players over that stretch of that that Chicago team that just continued to try to just run back the same thing over and over again. But I just don't know if there's going to be enough for them to get past this Nuggets squad. I just think that the depth of the Nuggets, Jokic, there's not really any answers for Jokic. They don't have the same defensive game plan as they did 2 years ago when they had the cat guarding Jokic, Gobert in the paint roaming like that. That was one of the the big storylines in that series. They just don't have that same they're not able to do that anymore. They just don't have that same caliber of they don't have that same roster. They don't have Cat. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is no longer on this team. He was a huge piece of what made this team work. I think I go back and think about kind of their defensive. It was Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker just absolutely hounding Jamal Murray in 24. It just is not the same team. It's just not the same team. Dosumu is good, but I don't know if he's to the same caliber of defender as a Alexander Walker. And again, McDaniels, his injury. What should we expect from that? And then, Gobert is 2 years older. He's getting up there in age. Like he's still incredibly capable. He's still a very good, defensive player. But, it's just different. And I think that this season in particular, like the Wolves, even, last year I had, I kept pointing out, especially towards the end of that season, they had so many just like frustrating losses. Like I always point out that Bucks loss that they had, because it was just such a incomprehensible collapse where they like blew like a 25-point lead in the fourth quarter. And, part of it was like Giannis, they were going up against Giannis and Giannis went crazy, but it still was just like a absolute collapse. And I was like, dude, why would anybody have any faith in this team? And then they beat the Lakers and, an injured Warriors team. But I think those questions from the end of last season, I think have kind of carried back, have sort of like circled back into the conversation again. And I think this time around, there are some legitimate concerns. I understand the back-to-back conference finals conversation is legitimate. Like they are a good enough team to get past 2 rounds, but I just don't think that they have. I just don't think it's going to be enough for them. I really don't. I think this is going to be more akin to the 23 Wolves when they lost in 5 to the Nuggets, and I think it's going to be the same result. Unfortunately, I just don't. I just don't think that they have the talent and the repertoire and just sort of the same level of intensity and identity as they did. And I mean 2024 they were like the best defensive team in the NBA, bar none. Like they were just the best. And it wasn't even really close, right? Like that was their whole thing. That identity, I think, has sort of deteriorated over time, and now they're kind of back in this position where it's like, what is, this is an Ant team, absolutely, he's still their star, but as the players have gotten older, Julius Randle's role is kind of questionable as a secondary creator, as a secondary star. And then, what is it going to look like with them trying to hold Jokic? Like, I just don't, I don't know. I have, there's too many lingering questions. Again, maybe they might prove me wrong once again, as they have done over the last few years. But I feel like this time around, I just don't, I don't like the vibes of this team necessarily going into the playoffs. There's just too much that is like kind of there, already out there, that I just can't really buy into them. So yeah, it's unfortunate because it is exciting to kind of see this rivalry between these two teams. We don't get, rivalries anymore, really. You just don't really see that. I would say the only other rivalry I can think of, and that's kind of dead now, was Pacers-Bucks. But I mean, the Pacers kind of owned the Bucks over the last couple of seasons. But really, outside of that, like, this is like the only other rivalry that I can kind of think of that makes sense, because they have faced against each other multiple times over the course of the last few years. They play in the same conference. Like, there's just a lot of that. There's a lot of history. Ant versus like, it's just a good, there's good. It's good to have that kind of contention between these teams. But unfortunately, I just don't think it's, in the case of the Wolves, I just don't think they have enough this year to really get past this Nuggets team. Maybe they'll prove me wrong once again and show that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the end of that. And I think it's going to be Nuggets in 5. It feels a little harsh considering the pedigree and the success over the last couple of seasons, but I think this Nuggets team is really good. I think Jokic is incredible, and I just don't think the Wolves have enough this year. That's going to do it for just a little, maybe not quick, but I try to give thoughts on the series that I, was the most intrigued by. Again, I think, whoever the Pistons face, if it does end up being the Hornets, I think that will be another intriguing series. But that has not yet been confirmed yet, because we're still waiting on the Charlotte Magic game tomorrow. I hope, and I think everybody, including Orlando fans, are hoping that the Magic lose and the Hornets move on, because I think that would just make for such a better series than the Magic. Nobody wants to see the Magic. The Magic don't want to see the Magic. I think it's a dead man walking right now. You got to lay them to rest, please. But yeah, it's super exciting stuff. One of the best times of the year. And yeah, we got two more sets, or two more games on tomorrow, and tomorrow Friday, and then Saturday it starts. Festivities start, and I'm so excited to watch some basketball. So yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.